Welcome to the Command Tower, a channel where we make EDH deck techs. If you enjoy these videos, make sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, the deck we're working on today is Emry Lurker the Loch. The plan is to make as many tiny artifacts as possible, and just benefit off of them. Anyway, let's get right into it. Emry is a 3-mana legendary creature, merfolk wizard. She says, this spell costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control, so for most of the game, Emry should only cost 1 mana. When Emry enters the battlefield, you put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then if you tap her, you choose to target artifact in your graveyard, and you can cast that this turn. So this deck's gonna play a lot of artifacts in your graveyard, and just get a lot of artifacts onto the battlefield, then benefit from there. First off, we got Ramp. Alright, we got Everflowing Chalice, 0-mana artifact and multi-kicker, and it taps for the amount of charge counters on it. Soul Ring is a 1-mana artifact that taps for 2. Everybody knows it. Millikin, 2-mana, 0/1 creature. Tap, put the top card of your library into your graveyard. Add colorless. Helps get stuff into your graveyard. Midnight Clock, 3-mana, taps for blue. Basically, you can put hour counters on it, or each upkeep you get an hour counter. When there's 12 hour counters, sacrifice it, draw a new hand. Palladium Mirror, 3-mana, creature, taps for 2. Dreamstone Hedron, 6-mana, taps for 3, and you can pay 3 and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. This is good because you can play after you sacrifice it with Emry. Foundry Inspector, Therium Sculptor, and Joyous Familiar. All just make your artifacts cost 1 less. The next part I like to call 0 mana, 0 problems. This is because it's all 0 mana artifacts. First off, we got Tormod's Crypt. Tap it, sacrifice it, exile cards from target player's graveyard. Mishra's Bauble, sacrifice it, and tap it. Look at the top card of target player's library, draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. This is really good with Emry, especially if you need card draw. Welding Jar, you can sacrifice it and regenerate an artifact, which is really good with all the artifacts in the deck. Bonesaw, it's equipment, and it says equipped creature gets +1/+0, and you can pay 1 to equip it. Phyrexian Walker is a 0-mana, 0/3 artifact creature. Doesn't do a whole lot, but it's good for blocking. And Ornithopter's kind of the same, the 0/2 with flying. Lodestone Bauble, you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to put up to 4 target basic lands from a player's graveyard on top of his or her library in any order. But then, that player draws a card at the beginning of next turn's upkeep. It can help you draw cards and get your land drops. Herbal Poultice, you pay 3 and sacrifice it to regenerate target creature. Just good in general. And Claws of Gix, you pay 1, sacrifice a permanent, and you gain 1 life. Which is good since we want to play stuff from your graveyard with Emry. And Spellbook, it's just you have no maximum hand size, which is always good. Next part is called Pay 1, Draw 1. They're all 1-mana artifacts that let you draw a card in the end. Flight Spellbomb, you can sacrifice it, and target creature gains flying until end of turn. When it's put into a graveyard, you may pay a blue if you do draw a card. Chromatic Sphere, 1 mana, you pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any color, draw a card. This is really good because it gets you to draw a card for very low mana, and then you can just keep playing. And Chromatic Star is the exact same as Chromatic Sphere. Aether Spellbomb, you can pay a blue and sacrifice it, return target creature to its owner's hand. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it, draw a card. It's good for just removing players' creatures that are causing you problems. Soul Guide Lantern, when it enters battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. Tap it, sacrifice it, exile each opponent's graveyard. Pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice it, draw a card. It's good for just removing opponents' graveyards. And Scrabbling Claws. You can tap it to make target player exile a card from their graveyard. Or you can pay 1 and sacrifice it, exile target card from a graveyard, then you get to draw a card. The next part is called More Emry Triggers. It's basically just untapping Emry or giving her haste so that you can use her more times to play more artifacts. First off, we got Refocus. 2-mana instant, untap target creature and draw a card. Replaces itself. Crashing Drawbridge, 2-mana artifact creature, so wall, defender. Tap it, creatures you control gain haste on a turn. This is really good to help get Emry out and just start playing stuff right away. Dramatic Reversal, 2-mana instant, untap all non-land permanents you control. is good because you can untap Emry and your mana rocks. Retreat the Coral Helm, 3 mana enchantment with landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield, you choose one. Most of the time, you're just going to want to tap or untap target creature, because you want to untap Emry. You can also scry if you really need to. Fate Stitcher is a 4 mana creature. You can tap it to untap or untap another target permanent. And you can play him for 1 mana from your graveyard for 1 turn, which is good because Emry might put him in the graveyard. Ephemeral Alchemist is a 2 mana 1/2 creature. You can tap him to untap target artifact or creature. It also has Morph, but that's not going to help out a whole lot. And then lastly, Corridor Monitor is a 2 mana artifact creature. When it enters battlefield, untap target artifact or creature. So it can untap Emry or mana rocks. The next part I like to call when you cast upon an artifact. It's basically all cards that just help you when you cast artifacts. Sai Master Thopterus is a 3 mana 1/4. When you cast an artifact, you make 1 with flying. And you can also pay 2 and sacrifice 2 artifacts to draw a card. Flying creatures and card draw is really good. Efficient Construction is a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, make a 1/1 Thopter with flying. It's a little worse than Sai, but it's still pretty good. Golem Foundry is a 3 mana artifact. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a charge counter on it. Remove 3 charge counters, make a 3/3. This can bring out a lot of big creatures, which really helps. Sky Theater Strix. It's a 2 mana 1/2 with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1 until end of turn, which you can just constantly swing for a decent amount of damage. Mishra's Self-Replicator. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1, and if you do, create a token of it, which really gets out of hand really quickly, because there becomes a lot of them. Diligent Excavator is a 2 mana 1/3. Whenever you cast a historic spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of the library into the graveyard. This just helps you get more cards to play with Emry. Secrets of the Dead. It's a 3 mana enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, you get to draw a card, which is definitely one of the best cards in the deck when you're playing a lot of stuff with Emry. Artificer's Assistant is a 1 mana 1/1 with flying. Whenever you cast a historic spell, scry 1, which is always good to see what's on top of your library. Riddlesmith is a 2 mana 2/1. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. It's good just to help you find the cards you need. Next up, we got Removal. Ichthyomorphosis, if that's how you say it, maybe. I don't know. 3 mana enchantment aura, enchant creature, and it loses all abilities and becomes a 0/1 fish, which is always good for your opponent's creatures. Frogify is a 2 mana enchantment, and enchant creature, it loses all abilities and is a 1/1 frog. Meteor Golem is a lot more expensive, but it's a 7 mana, 3/3 creature. When it enters battlefield, you destroy target non-land permanent, so you could destroy anything your opponent has. Nevinyrral's Disc, I think that's how you say it. 4 mana artifact, enters tapped, and you pay 1 to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, which is definitely one of the best cards in the deck, because you can always have a board wipe open, so you can keep playing with Emry. Powder Keg, 2 mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a fuse counter on it, sacrifice Powder Keg, destroy each artifact and creature with converted mana cost equal to the number of fuse counters on it. And Ratchet Bomb is just the same thing, but you can tap to put a counter on it. Counter spell, I don't really have anything to say about that. And negate also. Next up, we got Card Draw. Ichor Wellspring is a 2 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield or is put into your graveyard, you get to draw a card, which you probably will be sacrificing it, and then you can play it again. Draw a lot of cards. Sage of Latnam, 2 mana creature. Tap it, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. Goes really good with Ichor Wellspring. Calling Dais, 2 mana artifact. Sacrifice a creature, put a charge counter on it. Pay 1, sacrifice it, draw a card for each charge counter on it. Which, once again, is just really good with Emry, because you can keep playing this stuff you sacrifice. Future Sight is a 5 mana enchantment. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You can play a top card of your library. With all these tiny artifacts, and you being able to play the top card of your library, you can usually play a lot of stuff. Moonring Mirror is a 5-mana artifact. Whenever you draw a card, remove the top card of your library from the game, face down. Beginning of your upkeep, you may remove your hand from the game face down. If you do, put into your hand all of the cards you own removed it from the game with Moonring Mirror. It's a little complicated, but basically, you get to draw an extra card whenever you draw a card. Well, I mean, at your next upkeep, but same thing. Padim, Consul of Innovation. These are 4 mana, 1/4. Artifacts you control have hexproof. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest converted mana cost, or tied for the highest, you get to draw a card. River Kelpie is a 5 mana 3/3. When it or another permanent enters battlefield from the graveyard, draw a card. Whenever a player casts a spell from the graveyard, draw a card. You're going to draw a lot of cards off of this. It also has Persist, so when it dies, it's going to come back. And you're just going to get to draw more cards. And Trinket Mage, which isn't really quite card draw, but it's a 3 mana 2/2. When it enters battlefield, search a library for an artifact. It's converted mana 1 or less, and put it into your hand. Which, there's a lot of them, so. The next part is Storm It Up. Storm is a mechanic that says when you cast a spell, copy it for each spell cast before this turn. You can choose new targets for the copies. So first off, we got Temporal Fissure. 5 mana sorcery, return target permanent to its owner's hand. And Mind's Desire. 6 mana sorcery, shuffle your library, then exile the top card of your library. Till end of turn, you can play that without paying its mana cost. When you're playing lots of small artifacts, you can just play these and get a ton of copies. So, we got some cards to help you get a lot of copies of it. Hurkyl's Recall is a 2-mana instant. Return all artifacts target player owns to his or her hand. You can do that to yourself, then play them all. Or you could do it to somebody else, and that'll mess them up. Rebuild, 3-mana instant. Return all artifacts to their owner's hands. This you can recover really fast. But if you do that to other people's artifacts, they might not be able to recover that fast. It also has Cycling to help. Now you might be asking yourself, well, how are you going to win? Well, here we got Shambling Suit, 3 mana creature. Shambling Suit's power is equal to the number of artifacts and enchantments you control. Brood Star is a 10 mana creature, which seems expensive, but it's got affinity for artifacts. It also has Flying, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts you control. And Darksteel Juggernaut is a 5 mana creature. It's indestructible, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts you control. And it has to attack each combat if able. These can deal a lot of damage, because you will always have a lot of artifacts. Sculpting Steel is a 3 mana artifact, and it can enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield, which there's a lot of stuff you could copy in this deck. The Antiquities War is a 4 mana enchantment saga. The first 2 parts of the saga just help you get artifacts into your hand. The third part is an important part. Artifacts you control become 5/5 creatures till end of turn. This can deal a lot of damage to an opponent. It could just kill them right then. Masterful Replication, 6 mana instant. Choose one. Create 2 3/3 golems, or choose target artifact you control. Each other artifact becomes a copy of that artifact till end of turn. You probably won't do the first one. The second one is really good. You could make all your artifacts copies of Darksteel Juggernaut and swing it for like 100 damage or something crazy. Inkwell Leviathan is a 9 mana artifact creature. This island, walk, and trample, and shroud. And it's a 7/11. Just altogether, it's a really big creature, and it could be unblockable. It's very hard to remove. Mirran and Besiege, 3 mana enchantment. When it comes in, choose Mirran or Phyrexian. Mirran, whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1. Or Phyrexian, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card, then discard a card. Then, if there are 15 or more artifacts in your graveyard, target opponent loses the game. The second one isn't actually that hard to do with Emry. You're putting a lot of artifacts into your graveyard, and it builds up really fast. I've won several games with this card. And lastly, we've got lands. Encroaching Wastes is a colorless land, and you can pay for it, tap it, and sacrifice it to destroy target non-basic land. Field of Ruin is another colorless land. You can pay 2 and sacrifice it, destroy target non-basic land opponent controls. Each player searches his or her library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield, and shuffles their library. This is just good for getting rid of opponents' lands that are causing you a lot of problems. Mystic Sanctuary taps for blue. When it enters battlefield tapped, unless you control 3 or more other islands. When it enters untapped, you can put an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. This is good for getting your storm cards back. Phyrexia's Core taps for colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice an artifact. You gain 1 life. It's good because you want a lot of these artifacts in your graveyard. Foundry of the Consuls taps for colorless. You can pay 5, sacrifice it, create 2 1/1s with flying. If you just have a lot of extra mana and nothing to do, this is helpful. Zhalfir Void, when it enters battlefield, you discard 1, and it just taps for colorless. And then lastly, we just got 24 islands. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe.